back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, your host. I want to take a look at what's going on now, this back and forth between John Lewis. And, of course, he came out and said that he thought that Trump is not a legitimate president. He didn't think that he could ever work with him. And, of course, we've seen Chuck Schumer say, you know what, first, we don't even know who the Supreme Court nominee is, but as soon as Donald Trump puts one out there, we're going to shut it down. We understand that. That's partisan politics. And yet, the thing that bothered me about this was that when Donald Trump pushed back and said, what have you done for your constituents lately? You know, we understand he was a leader of the civil rights movement when he was 25, 50 years ago, okay? But now he's in his mid-70s. He's had 30 years in Congress. What has he done for his district? What has he done for the country? I can't really say. I know that he staged a sit-in on the floor last summer after the shooting in Orlando, trying to get more gun control. He hasn't helped the people in his district, and that's what Donald Trump pointed out. And then we had all these people like Ben Sasse, who's always been with the Never-Trumpers, always trying to say he's a non-partisan senator. He wants you to see him as rising above the political establishment, and yet he was deeply involved in the political establishment, trying to shut down somebody who genuinely was out of the political establishment, and that was Donald Trump. I guess Donald Trump took his marketing position. He didn't like that. Then we also have Michael Steele, former head of the RNC, saying, don't you even go there. Don't you even go there, Donald Trump. Don't you even talk about this guy. So he's a sacred cow. And I guess, look, without any disrespect for what he did, and we're going to talk about what he did here, and we're going to talk about things that he's right on, that he could work with Donald Trump on. We've got Robert Kennedy Jr., who disagrees on a whole array of issues with Donald Trump. And yet on the issue that's important, that he believes is important, that he sees that he can get something done about, he's willing to work with Donald Trump on that issue. It'd be great if John Lewis were a statesman like that, but he isn't. He isn't. You know, we say that, and it's always these people who say you can't attack me personally. You can't say anything about me because of who I am. They're always the ones who engage in ad hominem attacks, aren't they? And, you know, there's an element of this. Before I get into him, I got to say also on the other side, I believe that we should be able to criticize Donald Trump's policies. And to criticize Donald Trump's policies is not necessarily criticizing the man. Most of these people now are criticizing Donald Trump, the man. They're not coming after his policies. But I think Donald Trump actually wants people who will disagree with his policies. Look at the people he's put in his cabinet. They've had some open disagreements with Donald Trump on some core issues that he campaigned on. And you can look at that one of two ways. You can either say, well, Donald Trump either lied to us, or he's selling out, or he's being co-opted, or whatever. I don't think that's the case. I think it's more likely that he wants people who are going to be looking at offering him dissent and multiple options. I think he's a person who has an open mind to things and will examine the facts on both sides of the issues and is not afraid to take an unpopular decision like vaccines or like talking about the missing 28 pages of the 9/11 report. So I think he wants people who are going to question the conventional wisdom of the establishment. That's what made Donald Trump. And so I think when we talk about policies and we have issues with policies that people in his cabinet or that Donald Trump might talk about, I always get from people who are following Infowars that like Donald Trump, they come after me. He's like, don't you ever say anything about Donald Trump. Well, I'm not saying anything about Donald Trump. I'm talking about his policies. And like I pointed out, I think he is open to hearing dissent, or he wouldn't have the kind of people that he has in his cabinet. But let's talk about John Lewis, okay? This guy was a leader of the civil rights movement, as I pointed out, 50 years ago, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But here's what he had to say about Donald Trump that started all of this. It's an interview with Chuck Todd on NBC. Here's what he had to say.
You have forged relationships with many presidents. Do you plan on trying to forge a relationship with Donald Trump?
You know, I believe in forgiveness. I believe in trying to work with people. It's going to be hard. It's going to be very difficult. I don't see this president-elect as a legitimate president.
You do not consider him a legitimate president. Why is that?
I think the Russians participated in helping this man get elected.
There we go. The Russians did it. Okay, so that's there we are. We're back to selling this again. How long will they continue with this? And that's the whole point about making him illegitimate, about trying to say they can come after him, and also about tying his hands in terms of the Cold War. And if John Lewis doesn't realize that that's what this is ultimately about, the deep state trying to tie Donald Trump's hands in the Cold War, trying to stop him from de-escalating the Cold War that the deep state started with the aid of Obama, then he's being used as a dupe by those people. But this is what Donald Trump responded. He said, Congressman John Lewis should spend more time, he put this out on Twitter, should spend more time on fixing and helping his district, which is in horrible shape and falling apart, not to mention crime infested, rather than falsely complaining about the election results. All talk, 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 no action or results. Isn't that sad? And you know, it is sad because there's a lot of things that he could work with Donald Trump on. He opposed the TPP. He opposed these trade issues when they came up. He also opposed the 2000 trade agreement with China. See, he could work in the opposition to NAFTA and the opposition to the Chinese trade agreements. He could work with Donald Trump. You know, he also opposed dragnet surveillance by the NSA when it was done by Bush, but he didn't oppose it when it was done by Obama. Start to get the picture? He doesn't really care about these issues, or he would work against it when Obama does it, not just when Bush is doing it. And he would work with Donald Trump on opposing NAFTA, on renegotiating the Chinese trade agreements. There's a lot of things that John Lewis could make common cause with, that he could work to make things better for his district, to work to make things better for America. But instead, he has chosen to play these little demagogic tricks. And that's the essence of the Democrat Party. But what I guess I'm most disappointed in are these so-called Republicans, these rhinos like Michael Steele. As I pointed out, I saw him at the DNC, and he was a rock star with the Democrats. I don't recall seeing any other Republicans there, but people were just all around him and patting him on the back. He was a big celebrity, and this is what he had to say. Let's play this clip from Michael Steele.
And B, his questioning legitimacy.
Number one, don't tweet that. Number two, don't go there.
Yeah.
You can't talk about it. You can't criticize it.
Step back and try to appreciate what's being said and what the concern is. Now, yeah, you can put it in the partisan context. You know, he's a Democrat and I'm a Republican. He's black, I'm white, and all of that. But it goes to what you were just saying about what's undergirding that, and how does a community perceive your respect or lack of respect for their leaders?
Right. Yep.
And that says a lot. And I think if you're looking to heal and bridge and bring the people of America together, well, we're part of that.
Yeah.
As black folks, we're part of that. So our expectation
Okay,
is...
let's hold that right there. Now, you heard that clip from John Lewis, and he said, I believe in forgiveness, but I can't forgive Donald Trump. I can't work with Donald Trump. He's not legitimate. See, there's not any room there from people who are so hyper-partisan like John Lewis and Chuck Schumer. There's no room to reach out to those people, in spite of what Michael Steele says. Let's play the clip from Rand Paul, because I think he got it precisely right. Here's what Rand Paul had to say about partisanism. If you're that partisan, you are not immune to criticism.
So I think we shouldn't, when things involve race, it gets very, very sensitive. All of us, or none of us actually, want to be considered to be either racially insensitive. And so it's a very, very important subject. But I think we shouldn't ignore that people are partisan. So John Lewis is a partisan. I have a great deal of respect for him, but he's a partisan, and I disagree with him on issues. I should be able to honestly disagree with him and not have it all come back to I have no appreciation for civil rights icon because of this. And I think that's the part that I think sometimes unfair in this.
Okay, that's true. And let's go back and look at how he was a civil rights leader. He got involved with the Freedom Riders. What were the Freedom Riders? They were people who said, look, there's been a Supreme Court decision. There's a law saying that you cannot have segregated buses. You can't put us in the back of the bus if it's going between states, if it's an interstate bus ride, because the federal government can have jurisdiction on that, unlike when it's strictly within the state. And so to make their point and to get the federal government to enforce that, they set up a bunch of freedom rides where they had black people and white people get on buses, and they were going to drive through the South and go up into Washington, D.C. As that happened, as they were going through Montgomery, Alabama in 1961, that bus was attacked. The bunches of buses were attacked, and people were dragged out of that, black and white, were beaten. The buses were burned. And the Ku Klux Klan guy who did that was defended by Morris Dees, the guy who is the president and founder of the Southern Poverty Law Center. That was Morris Dees' only involvement in the civil rights movement, was to defend the Ku Klux Klan leader who did that. And he got paid what was then the the annual, the median family of four income. But he wanted to make a lot more money, and he did. And that's what the Southern Poverty Law Center is about. And we're going to play a clip from that and a clip from a report that I did back in 2014 called Profits of Hate. The SPLC is always prophesying about hate groups, but no, it's really about profit, PRO. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight on this Sunday, January the 15th, 2017. We're getting very close to the inauguration of Donald Trump. And, of course, the Democrats are stepping up their opposition to him, as we reported on Friday. And we had Michael Snyder on the radio show. He broke down the plans that we have from people like Bill Ayers and the leader of the Communist Party and others, saying that they want to create disruption. And this is a plan to create chaos, if not martial law. It's interesting that you see people on the left like Rosie O'Donnell using the term martial law. She spelled it correctly, but I don't think she understands the definition of martial law. If she did, she would not be calling for it, I don't think. But she's out there as a willing dupe for the left, for George Soros and others. I want to get back to what John Lewis is doing, because he's part of the effort now to delegitimize Donald Trump, again saying, oh, because of the Russians. No, see, the thing is, he doesn't know who to blame in various situations. If you go back and you look at the shooting that was in Orlando, what was his response to that? His response was to lead a sit-in on the House floor and say, we're going to sit here and we're going to stop all business until you bring up some gun control measures to protect us from guns. See, that wasn't the issue. The issue was that the government and the Department of Justice and the people, local law enforcement, they tried to hide the fact from us that he'd called into 9/11 and had read a Muslim prayer in Arabic using the terms Allah and so forth, or they translated as God and so forth. It was clearly a situation where you've got a terrorism event, but the way that the people they want to blame is not the religion of peace. No, they want to blame peaceful, law-abiding American citizens. So he doesn't know who to hold responsible for these events. In the same way that now he's blaming Russia for Hillary and the DNC. Hillary's failing as a candidate. The DNC's being exposed as political hacks. See, that's where the hacking of the election came in. We found out that the DNC were political hacks who stole the election from Bernie Sanders. You want to get upset about something like that, then, about somebody stealing the election, get upset with the DNC. What was exposed was the truth about these people, that they are hacks. There was no hacking of voting machines. There was nothing that needs to change cybersecurity except to get rid of any voting machines that we have to make it a paper ballot situation. But that's what they're doing. And, of course, he's not upset about the fact that national security was hacked by Russia and by every other government on earth because of Hillary Clinton's gross incompetence and criminal negligence in handling secure documents. Why aren't they upset about that? Well, okay, we know that they know better. And so it isn't just that John Lewis doesn't know who to blame in the shooting in Orlando. It isn't that he doesn't know who to blame about the documents. He blames a whistleblower, as always, rather than the people who created the crimes. And so that's the real issue. And as I pointed out before, if he really wanted to make his district better, as Donald Trump pointed out, he could do things to make his district better. He's been there for 30 years. What has he done for anybody in his district or in America? Nothing. He has opposed NAFTA. He opposed the 2000 trade agreement with China, but he only opposes things like that and NSA surveillance when it's being done by Republicans for the most part. And that's what he needs to get beyond, is that rabid partisanship. And when we come back, I'm going to play you something that goes back to his position as a civil rights leader. And I think this is all very pertinent as we look at the fact that Donald Trump has been told he can't come to the Black History Museum. They don't want him there to celebrate Martin Luther King Day. He'll have to come some other time, maybe after he's president. They'll have to see. That's the kind of inclusiveness we see now from civil rights leaders like John Lewis. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, your host. And I want to continue with the story about John Lewis, because I think John Lewis is deliberately provoking this attack to be timed with Martin Luther King Day and the Black History Museum that's just recently opened in Washington, D.C. Donald Trump is going to go there to honor the contributions of people like John Lewis, who had been involved in the civil rights movement. And as I pointed out in the last segment, being involved as a freedom rider in that. And yet, he's now being told, don't come. Don't come. We don't want you here. He's trying to reach out, trying to do something, trying to honor these people, but they don't want it. And they're saying, if you criticize him for his partisan attacks against you, If you criticize and push back against John Lewis because he personally attacks you, not even attacking your policies, but attacking you, then that is over the limit. Don't even go there, said Michael Steele, former RNC head. And, of course, Ben Sass jumping in on that as well, but most of the left. But this is all being orchestrated, and they're putting John Lewis out in front because they want to tie all of this together along with Martin Luther King Day and do that in the run-up to the election. Again, pushing, Russia did it to tie his hands in de-escalating the Cold War that Obama did, that Hillary did. Their Russian reset was a reset of the Cold War. Donald Trump wants to de-escalate these tensions, and everybody should support that. But we don't want to have a war with Russia. Obviously, there are people in the American government, in the deep state, who do, in the military-industrial complex. Leaders, the Republican and Democrat Party, people like John McCain, Lindsey Graham. They want it just like they wanted to set Syria on fire and did set Syria on fire. We're not going to let them do it to America. You can try to push people back and forth. This Democrat Party is nothing but a demagogue party that focuses on demographics. They pit one group against another, and they shift back and forth, do a quick 180 whenever it suits them. And the perfect example of this is the Southern Poverty Law Center and Morris Dees. As I pointed out, it's ironic, isn't it, that John Lewis, who became a civil rights leader mainly because of his Freedom Riders, and those Freedom Riders were attacked, their buses were burnt, people were beaten, and Morris Dees defended the Ku Klux Klan. Isn't that interesting? Can John Lewis find it within him to forgive Morris Dees? Of course he can, because they're on the same political team. And what is the thing that motivates Morris Dees to become a white savior for the civil rights movement after the civil rights movement ended? I did a report back in 2014. I called it Prophets of Hate. Kind of a pun, because the Southern Poverty Law Center is always prophesying about the dire consequences of all these hate groups, about the dire consequences of people exercising their freedom of religion if it comes to Christianity. But it's really not about prophesying of the coming of hatred and violence. No, it's really about profits, P-R-O-F-I-T-S, dollar signs. That's what motivates the Southern Poverty Law Center, and profits and power are what motivate demagogues and the Democrat Party. I want to play a little bit of a clip for you from this report that I did 2 years ago called Prophets of Hate about the Southern Poverty Law Center.
It's an interesting comparison for the SPLC to make, since it got its start in the violent racist confrontations of the 60s. On May 20th, 1961, when a busload of black and white Freedom Riders arrived in Montgomery, Alabama, they were met with what Time magazine described as an idiot club-swinging mob of about 100. In this picture, we see SPLC founder Morris Dees' first client. The man on the ground with the camera getting kicked by Klansmen? That's not Morris Dees' client. This is Dees' client. Dees didn't defend the Freedom Riders who were viciously attacked, bloodied, and had their bus set on fire. Dees defended the KKK thug, the ringleader. And he got him off, in spite of it being widely reported, like this article in Life magazine. And Morris Dees got paid a lot of money, $5,000, which at the time was the median family income for a year. But this is what his bio on the SPLC website says. After launching a law practice in Montgomery in 1960, he won a series of groundbreaking civil rights cases. Maybe he should amend that to say that he won for the Klan, a leg-breaking case against civil rights activists. Morris Dees would have us believe that sometime after he got Klansman Claude Henley off, sometime after he cashed the check, that he decided that he would start suing the Klan for cash instead of defending the Klan for cash. Maybe it wasn't a moral epiphany, but a financial epiphany. He could make much more money doing direct mail fundraising to the public than he could suing. Criticisms of the SPLC from the left focus on how little it does other than fundraising, how much money it hoards for its endowment, and how much money it pays multimillionaire Morris Dees.
Okay, let's hold it right there. And if you want to see the rest of that report, I'll put that out. You can find it on the Alex Jones channel. It's Prophets of Hate. That's a couple of years old, so I'll put it up on my Twitter account, Libertarian. If you want to take a look at that, I'll do that after the show. But here's the key. In 1996, the USA Today called the Southern Poverty Law Center the nation's richest civil rights organization with a $68 million bank account. At the time I wrote this 2 years ago, their bank account had grown to over $224 million. So, yeah, there's a lot of profits in selling hatred and selling division. And that's precisely what is being orchestrated in this coming week. You're going to see this escalating. I'm telling you, this is an orchestrated protest against Donald Trump. It is a narrative that they are creating in the run-up to the inauguration, one of racism to go along with Russia as well.